Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Delaney. I'm with the Sherborn Historical Society, and on behalf of that organization and the public library, I welcome you to Dallin in our memory and in his Sherborn Sculptures. Special acknowledgement and thanks go to our friend Martha Groten for doing so much to make this possible. Thank you, Martha. Our program will be about an hour, after which we'll briefly meet at the sculpture itself. So hopefully you can kind of skip down there with us afterwards. Of course, it's a beautiful day for that. And before introducing our guests, let's spend just a few minutes exploring what the town was like in 1924, the year of memory's dedication. Let's see if I can advance this. There we go. We all know that Sherborn's a quiet town today. Just think what it was like a century ago. Maybe we imagine our town in 1924 as portrayed in one of the era's many postcards. A still life of the town commons, clapboarded church houses, carefully tended gardens in front of neatly maintained farmhouses. That imagined past paints only a very partial picture. For like so many small towns across the nation, Sherborn was experiencing what must have felt unnervingly like disruptive changes to the generations old status quo. For small town folks across the country, the 20th century ushered in the outside world in dramatic new ways, with technology altering age-old everyday life rhythms. Telephone service made its debut in 1902, and 4 years later, the first registered automobile rumbled down our dirt roads. Of course, electricity began to immeasurably impact life as well, further shrinking Sherbornites' world with the advent of radio, which broadcast new and more cosmopolitan modernity over the airwaves. Meanwhile, electric home appliances especially altered women's lives, which were then largely focused on the domestic economy. In the public realm, of course, after generations of activism, women at last earned the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. With these changes, Sherborn's local economy was at something of a crossroads. In its article featuring the 1924 memory dedication, the Boston Herald reported, "The town was once quite an industrial center where whips, willow goods, guns, pitchforks, shoes, and cider were manufactured. The only plant to survive today is the cider mill. The town is now a residential and farming village." Historians show that at this time, a national urban-rural rift driven by social and economic changes sharply split the country. We might see traces of this in our town as well. Like the country's, Sherborn's demographic composition was shifting. By 1920, Catholic residents, who first began arriving in the final decades of the 19th century, had sufficient numbers to found their own congregation, St. Teresa's Church, in the town's vacated almshouse. That may have resulted in private whispers among the few older Yankee families. What was occurring in a 600-acre triangular parcel of land then called Sherbornville likely raised more than an eyebrow. By 1924, that area had rapidly grown into what, to many, likely felt as a separate enclave. Attracted by Framingham's mills, new Italian and Irish Catholic and Eastern European Jewish immigrants built a small neighborhood decidedly different from the sleepy hamlet a few miles away. Say the co-authors of their 1966 Sherborn history, The Century Turns, there were so many nationalities that it was a regular League of Nations. These people boasted that, with the rate of increase in the population of that area, in 5 years they would move the town hall over there, and there was a real danger of them doing it. It also included a red light district, complete with kitchen bar rooms. It was a nuisance to Sherborn and a thorn in the side of Framingham. The Framingham chief of police was named special officer in Sherborn, but it did not help. Town water finally settled the issue. Oh, I forgot to have that slide up. Those are a couple screenshots from the 1920 census for Sherborneville. And that's the Denison manufactory in Framingham. In 1925, with state legislative approval, the town ceded Sherborneville to Framingham, and with that transfer, lost 27% of its population. In so doing, the town almost literally went back in time. That's a bit about Sherborn on the eve of October 1924. My point here is that for many, the town's 250th birthday was a reason to look back to the comforts of yesteryear and its predictable, stable, and perhaps to an extent mythical past, where change, when it happened at all, was almost indiscernible. So when planning began for the celebration of the community's birthday, civic leaders chose to pull out all the stops and commemorate the town's proud past, a reminder of what their progenitors had bequeathed, and perhaps what they then felt was too quickly becoming bygone. Planners put together a 3-day celebration, culminating in the dedication of the Memory Monument, gifted by a local kid who became our most well-known and celebrated philanthropist, our own version of Andrew Carnegie, William Bradford Homer Dowse. The Boston Herald reports that on Saturday, with music ringing in the air and flags fluttering in the breeze, today opened its 3-day celebration of its 250th birthday with a program embracing an athletic carnival, airplane maneuvers, and an anniversary banquet. It goes on. 3 Army airplanes under the command of Lieutenant Robert J. Brown, Jr. of the Boston Airport maneuvered over the town several times. Thomas Darrett of this town won the half-mile run and the 100-yard dash. John Cox of Medfield, the high and broad jumps. Sylvia Flagg, the 100-yard dash for girls. And Stephen Pharisee, the 100-yard dash for boys. Saturday evening's affair was composed of a who's who of Sherbornites in formal attire, with an exquisite menu featuring appetizers of grapefruit and cherries, a main course of roasted Vermont turkey, and desserts including assorted cakes, frozen pudding, and fancy crackers. Sunday, of course, was dedicated to religious services at the Pilgrim Church at 10:45 and at the Unitarian Church at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The day concluded with union services at the town hall at 7:30 with prayers, speeches, and patriotic songs, including America the Beautiful and My Country 'Tis of Thee. Monday was the grand finale, beginning with a parade starting at the town hall at 10 o'clock, which then marched to Dowse's Corner and then turned back again. 3 judges reviewed the floats and awarded Loving Cup prizes in historic, organization, commercial, and individual categories. Band concerts on the Sherborn Commons straddled the 2 o'clock memory dedication. At 1:30, Legion posts from surrounding towns marched from the ball fields to the memorial for the formal ceremony. Main Street was closed, of course, and drivers were instructed to park their autos at the playground and at Flags Field. A restroom was available at Unity Hall, where Campfire Girls and the Hospitality Committee welcomed visitors. The Brotherhood Room at Unity Hall, the program instructed, was a fine place to smoke and chat. And then, of course, the town gathered at the ancient central burying ground for the formal dedication of William Bradford Homer Dowse's grand gift, which began at 2 o'clock. And with that, please join me in welcoming our 2 speakers from the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum in Arlington, Geri Tremblay, President, and Nancy Blanton, Secretary and Staff Director of Outreach and Engagement. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kevin, for your introduction. I'm Nancy Blanton, and on behalf of the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum, I'd like to state our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the Cyrus Dallin Art Museum is located on the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts tribe, the tribe of indigenous peoples from whom the colony, province, and commonwealth have taken their names. We pay our respects to the ancestral bloodlines of the Massachusetts tribe and their descendants who still inhabit historic Massachusetts territories today. So a little bit about the museum. We were founded in 1995 and we're located in Arlington, right off of Massachusetts Avenue and steps away from the Minuteman Bike Trail. And I hope that what you learned from this presentation today piques your interest to come and visit us sometime and hear all of the other great stories of Dallin's works, achievements, and advocacy. And Cyrus Dallin, who was our man Cyrus Dallin? He was a celebrated American sculptor, educator, and Indigenous rights advocate who lived and worked in Arlington, Massachusetts for over 40 years. He was born in 1861 in Springville, Utah Territory, a small Mormon settlement in the shadows of the Wasatch Mountains. And to quote Cyrus, "There was a clay bank between the Ute encampment and the settlement. When we got tired from playing, we used to sit down at the clay bank and make models of animals that roamed the prairies in those days. Antelope, wolves, buffalo, horses. That's where I got my liking for modeling, there at the clay bank beside the village of Ute teepees," end quote. And modeling in clay became more than just a fun pastime for Cyrus, as his exceptional talent became very apparent. And in 1880, at the age of 18, with the financial support of two local businessmen and proceeds from his parents' mortgage, Dallin moved to Boston to study with sculptor Truman Bartlett at his studio on Federal Street. Regrettably, Dallin and Bartlett had a tumultuous relationship, so Cyrus left the studio to pursue opportunities that Bartlett did not approve of. I gather that Bartlett felt that despite his enormous talent, confidence, and drive, this frontier upstart was audacious in contradicting his advice and not showing him an important Boston art critic due respect. Dallin moved to Quincy for 15 months, honing his craft, making cemetery statues and reliefs for a granite company. Dallin went on to spend 2 extended periods of study in Paris in the 1880s and in the 1890s, a necessary rite of passage for any young sculptor seeking to establish their reputation in the field. He studied with Henri Chaput, with whom he had a much better relationship, at the Académie Julienne. It was from Chaput that Dallin learned the principles of the Beaux Arts style, which emphasizes classical forms infused with naturalism and emotional intensity. In 1900, Dallin became a member of the faculty at the Massachusetts Normal Art School, now Mass College of Art and Design, in Boston, and during his 40-year tenure at the school, he mentored a generation of Boston sculptors. He was a passionate yet patient instructor, and his students fondly referred to him as Cyrus the Great. Dallin was a very prolific sculptor, and in addition to his iconic Paul Revere monument, other historical subjects include the Anne Hutchinson Monument at the Massachusetts State House and Massasoit Usamequin in Plymouth Harbor. Dallin's commissions were not limited to the New England area, and he received a number of commissions from the Mormon Church, his most impactful being the Angel Moroni, an iconic symbol of the Latter-day Saints Church that sits atop the Salt Lake Temple, as well as temples all over the world, including the Boston Temple, which is actually in Belmont. He also created Signal of Peace in Lincoln Park, Chicago, and Medicine Man in Philadelphia. While Dallin sculpted many different subjects, he was most passionate about portraying this land's indigenous peoples. As a child, Dallin became close with the Ute families who lived near the Springville settlement and maintained relationships with them throughout his lifetime. His sculptures of indigenous people were intended as personal reflections on the humans that he admired and public commemorations of indigenous resilience in the face of ongoing subjugation. Dallin spent the last 20 years of his career fiercely criticizing American imperialism and passionately advocating for the rights of Indigenous peoples. Dallin served as a president of the Massachusetts branch of the Eastern Association of Indian Affairs, a national organization that partnered with Native and non-Native groups on efforts to protect land rights and sovereignty, improved health care and education, and revitalize Native arts amongst indigenous nations. Dallin was viewed as a trusted ally and collaborator by Indigenous leaders and was one of the few non-Native members of the Algonquin Indian Council of New England. Through his work, Dallin pioneered the role of artist as an agent of social change. For instance, the equestrian form was historically reserved to pay tribute to Anglo-European military figures. Dallin recognized and respected Native American historical figures using this type of imagery. He also adopted the heroic nude as a form of Indigenous commemoration. His Massasoit shows the Native leader as a counterpart to Michelangelo's David, drawing a parallel between the story of David and Goliath and Indigenous peoples and colonizers. And now that you've had a little introduction to the life and works of Cyrus Dallin, I'd like to turn things over to my esteemed colleague, Geri Tremblay, who is one of the founders of the Dallin Museum. That's right. Yep. Okay.
Hello, I'm Geri Tremblay. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jen and Kevin, for putting this together, and Martha. We really appreciate the invitation. So now I'm going to see if I can get these to go in order, or as I'm speaking here. Cyrus Dallin's, let's see, Cyrus Dallin's iconic bronze statue of memory and its surrounding spacious exedra, that is the seating area, are located in the center of Sherborn, Mass, which of course you know. Memory is clothed in a classic Greek chiton, and you can see this is the dress. And then later, in a minute, you'll notice the mantle. Her head is covered with a himation or mantle, which when over her head is a traditional symbol of mourning. She holds a battle helmet here. She holds a battle helmet surrounded by a wreath of victory, representing all the war dead from King Philip's war in 1676 to World War I. Now I'm ahead of myself. A nearby flagstaff lists soldiers from World War II to now. Memory and the exedra lists soldiers from World War II to now, and memory and the exedra were donated by Sherborn's native son, William Bradford Homer Dowse. Dallin's 8-foot bronze statue is similar to several other war monuments that he created but were never installed. Although entitled Angel at the Tomb, the classical clay sketches are mostly designed as Nike's Winged Victory. You can see the Winged Victory over here, which is in the Louvre. The World War I memorial in Arlington, dating to 1927, is indicative of this type. The female figure wears a chiton and a mantle, the chiton and the mantle over her head, 2 wreaths, one in each hand, lowered at her side, tells us the story that her soldiers have been victorious, but with great loss of life. The inscription reads, "To the memory of the sons of Arlington who gave their lives and service in the war for humanity." Had this been installed, the names of the servicemen would have been inscribed on the back. So this is just a model that we have in the museum. It's quite nice because frankly, we don't have a lot of models by Cyrus Dallin. I think it's probably unique. The proposed Caldwell family memorial, 2 Angel at the Tomb memorials, the Melrose and Woburn memorials, and 3 unidentified, untitled memorials all depict victory in mourning. So you can see again, they're in Greek classical dress. You can see the wings, which are typical of Nikes in ancient configuration. And here you have much smaller steles that would have the names of the servicemen who had died for their country. Another. These are, as you see, some of them are more of a sculpture in the round, and then some are, this is even better, some are shallow bas relief. So these are very typical, and none of these seem to have been installed, no matter where they were intended for. The Sherborn Memorial is built in 2 pieces. Memory stands before a stele with wonderful architectural elements. Side pilasters right here, you can see those on the side. And above a pediment with acrotiri, these little marble accoutrements. The inscription on the plinth reads, "In honor of the men of Sherborn who gave their lives in defense of their country." The surrounding exedra of New Hampshire granite was designed by architect William Dinsmore, and the bronze panels were created by Reed and Barton. You can see there are like four to 6 panels on the side, but this is visible here. The text, how do I back this up, Kevin?
You should be able to hit it backwards.
Here we go, or I'll destroy the whole thing. Yay! The text over one bench reads, "This memorial is erected and presented to the town of Sherborn, his birthplace, by William Bradford Homer Dowse, 1924. An inscription over a second bench memorializes Dowse's ancestors who fought in America's wars. The statue and the monument were dedicated at an event celebrating the 250th anniversary of the town." Almost 100 years later, in 2017, Sherborn received a state grant to restore the aging monument. The funds were a matching grant from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which administers the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund. Thanks to then Historical Commission co-chairs Peggy Novak and Susie Wheelwright, and conservator Rika McNally and her crew, the elegant restored bronze overlooks the town from a classic granite setting for all to enjoy. An example of another style of monument resides in my hometown. The Woburn Civil War Memorial is located at Woodbrook Cemetery in Salem. Designed in 1904, the structure is a high granite altar with fluted Ionic columns at the side. Dallin's 2 bronze bas-relief panels, each 9 feet by 3 feet, represent soldiers setting out and returning from the war. So I think you can see the Ionic columns there. This is an end bas-relief. There are bas-reliefs on each short end, and then the 9-foot, 3-foot high bas-reliefs on the long sides. And, oops. The first bas relief shows the departure of the troops, soldiers holding their bayoneted rifles, marching to the beat of 3 drums. Can we see the drums? No. Are they in the back? I can't quite see. We have drums over here? No,
No drum.
no drums. Trust me, there are drums. With their commander on horseback and at their side. The second panel, Return of the Troops, depicts spent soldiers returning with war-torn flags, walking to an honor guard, possibly the steps of the Massachusetts State House. The men carry American flags, furled, unfurled, and tattered. Dallin included his self-portrait as one of the Northern soldiers. No, I'm gonna figure out where this one is. Oh, will we have that next slide?
He's in the detail there.
Oh, I see it, great. Cyrus created several varied styles of memorials to commemorate the loss of loved ones, public and private. Victory, on the left, 1919, an essay in the free classical style, is the figural element of a fountain at the Museum of Art in Springville, Utah. However, they moved it inside, but they had a lovely fountain outside, and this was set in the middle of the fountain. And on the right, Praying Night, 1929, honors 11 boys from Cambridge High in Latin who lost their lives in the war. And this is installed in front of the principal's office. And a quick story. This was lost for possibly 30 years. And Heather got a phone call and called me and said, someone wants to sell that to us for $10,000, was it?
For the value.
They were looking for the value. So we chatted and said, well, we know this is missing from Cambridge High in Latin, so we're not going to buy it. And we talked, and Heather called our lawyer, and he advised that she call Cambridge Police Department. It got really sort of intense, I guess. And then the police went to the owner's house, and the woman had recently lost her husband, and it seemed to have been one of those deals, well, guess what fell off the back of the truck? So she had it in her home for many years, and this is, what is it, 41 inches high, about 41 inches high, and pretty heavy, more than a couple hundred pounds. So in fact, they said, well, we didn't know that. We're very gracious about it, and returned it to Cambridge High in Latin. But now the school is called Cambridge Ringe in Latin, Cambridge Ringe. So it's really nice, and you can see it right in front of the principal's office. It's I think a different kind of a sculpture to memorialize the deceased of a war. The Starrow Memorial, which is on my left, sometimes referred to as a boy and his dog, 1923, was designed for the estate of James J. Starrow in Lincoln, Mass, to honor his son. And to the right is the Patrick Collins Memorial, 1907. It's located in Holyhood Cemetery in Brookline, Mass, and is described as a Celtic cross cut from Tennessee marble, containing a life-size bronze bust of Collins. In conclusion, I would like to quote Cyrus Dallin. In writing in Sculpture of America some years ago, I use the following expression. These sculptures and monuments that adorn our cities and towns should have a twofold purpose. Not only should they be memories to brave men and brave deeds, but they should ornament and beautify our public squares, stimulating thereby the imagination and love of beauty in all beholders. So now I'll return this to Nancy. Thank you.
So Martha has told us about and shared photos of your town's Oliver Wendell Holmes Senior bust, which I finally laid eyes on upstairs about a half hour ago. It was donated to the Sherborn Library in January of 1921 by Dr. Charles Locke Scudder, a founding member of the American College of Surgeons and a pioneer in trauma surgery. Apparently Dr. Scudder lived here in Sherborn for a while. I'm trying to mask my Medford accent, so that's why, you know, I said like Sherborn. He bought his home in Sherborn at 102 Washington Street in 1918. The Dallin Museum is very proud to display a similar bust as well. We purchased it in 2003 from a private owner who acquired it from an art dealer in the 1960s. Now, in my early days of working at the museum, this bust caught my attention because in 5th grade, our teacher had us memorize Holmes's poem, Old Ironsides. A tear her tattered ensign down, long has it waved on high, and many an eye has danced to see that banner in the sky. Beneath it rung the battle shout and burst the cannon's roar. The meteor of the ocean air shall sweep the clouds no more. And there's a few more stanzas. And I can assure you that when you're 10 and you have this memorized, you're a big hit at parties. I no longer have it committed to memory, but the full text of it is on the table if you'd like to check it out later. So Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., 1809 to 1894, was widely appreciated by the public during his time, particularly for his literary works. He was a very popular poet and humorist. He achieved national fame with poems like Old Ironsides and was known for his witty and conversational writing style. His humor and relatable topics resonated with readers. He was an engaging lecturer and spoke on topics ranging from science to literature, known for his captivating style that held students' attention. He was also known for his medical contributions, gaining recognition as a physician and medical reformer, advocating for new ideas like popularizing the term anesthesia. Cyrus Dallin was 22 years old when he created the original bust of Holmes, who was 74 years old at the time. Dallin called upon Holmes and asked him to sit for him. But according to an interview Dallin gave to the Boston Transcript, Holmes, quote, put me off in his humorous way, saying that he had a friend who once sat for a bust, and it was such a ghastly thing, it made everybody sick to look at it, and that he sat so long he nearly died, and he believed the sculptor did die, end quote. But Dallin persevered and sculpted the work from memory and from photos that he had seen in the newspaper. Sometime later, Holmes and a friend visited a Boston gallery where the bust was on exhibit. The likeness appeared strangely familiar to him, and after slowly circling the work, Holmes exclaimed, "Why, Lord bless me, it's myself." And so as often is the case, the stories behind the works are just as interesting as the works are remarkable and serve as a connection to the humanity of the people behind them. And now I'm going to pitch the museum. Please come and see us in person, but you can always follow us on social media, the usual suspects, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our YouTube page, which I highly recommend you check out. We have a lot of really fun material on there. But of course, we would love it if you came to the museum. We are open on Saturdays and Sundays. between 12 and 4. And if you have a group of friends who would like to come during the week, please get in touch with me and I'd be happy to coordinate a tour. And that's it for the presentation part of the program. But if anybody has any questions, Geri and I would be happy to try to answer them. Yes.
These sculptures, I noticed the wings were in different positions at different memorials, and do you know if there's a significance with the way the wings were?
You would definitely know that.
I don't think so. I spent a lot of time researching Nikes.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually a classicist. And they, if you go to Greece and you go through their museums, they can be mostly raised. However, in the National Museum, we have one where it's a terracotta, which is very unusual, and it's painted and it's broken, it's lost its arms and so forth. But if you look at it from the back, the wings are strapped down, and this is the only statue of this type with the wings strapped down. And the significance of that was so that Nike, meaning victory, doesn't fly away. So that's a little story right out of the National Museum there. But other than that, I've never read that up or down or that.
It's more of a design decision.
I think, yeah, I would think so.
Hi, yeah, Martha.
I just want to say that was such a great talk you just gave, and I just wanted to add one little item about the Oliver Wendell Holmes bust, which is what we knew from here in Sherborn, is that it was cast by the Caproni Brothers Company in Boston, and we have here visiting with us someone who works at that company.
Oh,
Inheritance.
that's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's over there on the.
That's fantastic.
Introduce her because she's, I know.
One ask.
So Lisa's the Bob Shore, who does our restorations and may even be casting another statue in the future. Might not be right away, we're working on that. And, oh yeah.
All right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And this is our founder, James McGough, who died a year ago. And we have a commission by her dad, and you're probably working on it.
Yeah.
And
I was like, oh, that looks familiar.
yeah.
So this space.
Anticipating that this will be cast by April, I think. I should get it in the mail.
I already said.
He said to you, we want to have a celebration and an unveiling next May as part of the garden party, which should be invited. So, we really missed Jim. Because the museum was founded shortly after 1995, when the town of Arlington passed an article at town meeting, and we were established as the town's Cyrus Dallin Art Museum. So, we lost him a little over a year ago, and closed it.
I wanted to mention I did the copy of one of the historic catalog. We used to collaborate, I mean, not us particularly, but our predecessors collaborated with them. So there's a catalog of our casts of Dallin's work from early 1900s over 50 years. So feel free to take a look what's on the table.
Thanks.
Could you just explain, I know that your company, Skylight Studios in Woburn, inherited all of the Caproni materials from the Caproni Brothers Company that did the casting, but
Yeah.
how do you work with them now, and could you tell us a little more about your business?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of antique casts that the Bone brothers originally made from molds that were taken from original pieces in places like the Louvre or the Academia or the British Museum. So we have a lot of historic statues. In fact, we have 19, I think 5 different sizes. Maybe 6. We kept that tradition alive. We have our own modern molds that we made from the antique casts. We can store them, and we sell all over the world. And we're in Woburn, Mass, actually right across from the Woodbrook Cemetery, one of the slides.
Yeah, so her address, their address is Salem Street.
Yep, Salem Street, Woburn. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was struck by, the Woburn, memorial, I think it was, it reminded me. Yeah, that one right there, it reminded me of, St. Gaudens, Massachusetts 54th in
Yeah.
Boston Common.
Yeah.
I was wondering if, I mean, they were roughly contemporaries, these two, and if they ever kind of connected and just one other quick question connected to that. St. Gaudens, the National Park Service on their tours will very carefully point out that that was very much a political statement that he was making in portraying African-American soldiers as like authentic human beings rather than the lewd, crude stereotypes that were out there in the mass media. And again, looking at this, I thought, wow, they're just very, very similar. And what Dallin seemed to do with Native Americans strikes me as somewhat similar. I don't know if there was any, if there's any kind of calculated political statement he was trying to make. He said he was very interested in Native American history and culture.
I don't know anything about that with
This
this
one?
piece, but I do have a St. Gaudens story, but please enlighten us if you know.
Yeah. St. Gaudens and Daniel Chester French were friends, and would ask them what they thought of some of his bas reliefs or statues that he was creating, and they would give him advice, and I think he would follow it. For the Shaw, that's the Shaw Memorial in Boston, and I think it's, you know better than I do, because at Skylight Studios, is that?
But they
still
did the
there?
restoration.
No,
We restored it in 2020.
Yeah.
We restored the bronze. in
Right.
2020.
Right, so I saw the bronze portion of the Shaw Memorial. Were you? Yeah.
Did you come see it?
We were there. So that was fabulous. The directors were just delighted to have that. I just think it was traditional because they were presenting a Civil War memorial. And I'm thinking of the Shaw Memorial. I think it's twice the size of this one. This is like a 9.
It's like
It is massive. Like
10
this.
times the size.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you say it goes from here to follows the wall?
not quite that big, it probably about half that.
Okay, so I have to say that was a very exciting hour or so that we were there.
And it's much deeper.
Yes, it's much, but the relief is much deeper than this. This is a really shallow relief, and the other is more of a high relief. And I was at when we came in, we were at the head of a horse, and the horse's nose was coming really off the base of the bronze panel, for want of another word, and her and her dad's studio cleaned and restored that. It's a phenomenal piece. You should see it in Boston if you haven't. You probably walked by it, all of us have walked by it many times without really giving it quite a look. But I think this is just, a memorial. And I forgot, Kevin, what else you might have said to me.
It was more about the political statement that St. Gaudens was making. I don't know, maybe that was a stretch to try to equate those. You were gonna
Yeah.
say something else, I think, on St.
Well,
Gaudens.
unfortunately not related to this piece, just about Dallin and St. Gaudens' relationship.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've seen any mention of that kind of thing in any of the research that we did for it. But a whole other presentation for another day. Cyrus Dallin did the Paul Revere Monument in Boston's North End, and it took him 57 years and 7 different versions of the model. A very challenging course for him. And at one point, I think maybe it was around the 4th model, he was trying to get support from other established sculptors. So he wrote to St. Gaudens and asked him, wish I had a picture I'd show you, asked him, would you, put in a good word for me so we can try to keep the ball rolling with this project? It's been stalled for a number of reasons. And St. Gaudens declined because he thought that the rider was magnificent. He really liked no, I'm sorry, that's the opposite way. He thought the horse was amazing. And Cyrus definitely did have an enormous talent for sculpting horses. So St. Gaudens appreciated the horse, but he thought the rider was not quite right. So he's like, I'm sorry, I can't, can't help you out yet. Keep at it, kid. And he did until it was finally established in 1940. So it was Dallin's first and last major commission. A labor of love for sure, but yes.
What connects Dallin to Sherborn? In other words, like how do sculptors select which towns they choose to make these monuments for, or is it they're being sought out by the towns themselves? Is there any connection that you know of on why Sherborn specifically?
I don't know why Sherborn specifically. Kevin might know. But I knew I was thinking about this as I came up. Oh, good, yeah.
Which had a lot of weight, philanthropic
Okay.
weight,
Yeah,
and he probably approached Dallin, but that's all speculated.
yeah. I was thinking on the way over here, I said, somebody's gonna ask how he got that commission, and I don't know the answer to that question.
See 5 or 6 different sculptures, and then whoever accepts the.
Yeah. I think that's what it is.
Yes, I think if you wanted a statue put in the center of your town or at a cemetery, you would look for a master sculptor. Lisa's, she's gonna show. Yeah, told me at one time that there were only 3 sculpture workshops in the US, 2 on the East Coast, 1 on the West. So
It
you know,
depends on how you define it, but it's rare to have a figurative, more classical based traditional sculpture studio. But new talent pops up all the time too, which is great.
right, but you need space, you need a studio, I assume it needs to be your business. You need to be able to sculpt, you need to be able to mold, and you need to be able to cast. So it's not the guy down the street,
Right.
it's not only a talent and an art, it's a talent and art and it's technology.
Any idea how long it took him to develop memory?
I wouldn't know. You wanna take a guess?
There might know. She's gonna sit in the back the next time.
So it's hard to compare because things are much quicker now. Like when someone approaches us for something, and we ask the deadline, it's usually yesterday. But the design phase can take several months. You have to do a lot of drawings, those smaller maquettes that you saw on the slideshow. And so that can be several months or even a couple years, depending on how much back and forth there is with the committee that hired you to do the work. Once you have the clay, you have to make a whole armature. There are quicker ways to do that now using some like foam and like quicker 3D milling kind of process. But back then it was all made by hand, little wood pieces. And then the clay itself can take many more months to years. And then the bronze casting itself is a whole other process that can take, a good couple months as well. So, for us, sometimes we have to get something done in like from start to finish in a year, but that's really quick compared to, you know, we often like sort of dream of working like in previous times where things could take a little more. So
We have time for probably 2 or 3 more questions. I know Betsy's had her hand up for a while, and then Martha. and
There was another connection between, William Bradford Homer Dowse and Dallin, or well, the Reed Martin who did the casting. I believe that Dowse married the daughter of one of the Reeds. So
Oh.
it was distinctly connected to the casting experience. I've never seen any indication that the town initiated this. It's all a donation from him. So the town was given the option of accepting or not accepting, but accepted.
I was wondering too about how Dallin was chosen to be the sculptor of memory, because at the time, Sherborn had Mrs. Kitson living in Sherborn, and she did sculpting, and she was a contemporary of Cyrus Dallin. I thought, why didn't Sherborn ask her to do it? And but she was doing a lot of war memorials with the Gorham Company, and maybe that she had a special agreement with that company, and so Mr. Dowse's connection with Rita Barton meant that he wasn't gonna ask Mrs. Kitson. But in recognition of Nancy Blanton's former job working for the Saltonstall organization, foundation, what is the name?
Salt and Stall office.
The Saltonstall
Yeah.
office. I brought in from the other room this statue of Richard Saltonstall, because we couldn't bring the bust of Oliver Wendell Holmes down here for the program. And this is by Mr. and Mrs. Kitson. I think Mr. Kitson did this maquette, but it's part of the memorial to the founders of Watertown, Mass. And Mrs. Kitson, I know, did 2 of the big bronze reliefs on the Excedra, and that stands in the middle. And the Richard Saltonstalls of Sherborn donated the money for the Sherborn Library when this was originally built in the early 70s. And this was a gift from the Kitson's adopted granddaughter who lived here in Sherborn, Holly Leland Mayer. So we brought it in because it was a very nice connection, so that was very fun.
That's really, thank you for bringing that out. It's fantastic.
Any other questions? All right, well, we are going to take a few minutes and gather our things and migrate about a couple 100 yards up the road to the actual memorial.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.